So I decided to go all in on Apple's new iPhone Air to kind of see who this phone was for. I decided to put my main SIM card on here, and I've been using it as my daily phone for the last 48 hours, and I have some thoughts on it. Overall, surprisingly positive, but there's definitely a few things that everybody should know about it, so let's talk all things iPhone Air, who this is for, why Apple made it, and what you're giving up for an objectively a worse phone. Let's get into it. But before we continue, if you enjoy videos like this one, definitely consider subscribing to the channel because we have more reviews coming down the pipeline like the iPhone Air as well as the 17 Pro Max and a bunch of other goodies that we did pick up during Apple's latest release. But now let's talk about the iPhone Air and talk all things hardware first because that's the most important part. So before I get into the hardware of this thing, I do want to mention for everybody that's watching this, this is not a value play. This is objectively a worse phone than the entry-level iPhone 17 and a worse phone than a lot of older iPhones as well. You're giving up a decent amount here. You only have one camera sensor on the rear, you have slower USB-C data speeds, you only have one speaker on the top of it. So it is a mono speaker, you have a smaller battery. So again, objectively, it is a worse value overall than something like the iPhone 17. So I definitely just want to put that into one bucket, understand that this is not a value play, this is something completely different. So let's talk about the hardware because this is where I think you need to actually pick this thing up to understand what's happening here. Again, from the forefront and from a footprint standpoint, if you look at it like this, yes, it looks like a normal everyday iPhone, again with a modern dynamic island. You can't really tell if it's an iPhone Pro or an iPhone Plus or something like that, but again, it looks like an iPhone. It's not until you get to the rear of it where you see that something different is going on. But the second that you pick this thing up, you understand that this is a different iPhone because it is extremely lightweight, like way more lightweight than you'll ever think it is. Yes, you can see how many grams it is. I think it's like 165 grams or something like that. And you can't really comprehend what that is because this is the first time that we have such a large display on such a lightweight phone and such a thin phone on top of that. And then not only that, the way that Apple curved the edges where it's not more squared off as it usually is with the older models makes it feel even thinner than it is. So I know that a lot of people used to think that they wanted a smaller iPhone just to be able to have it one-handed and be able to do the one-handed use and be able to reach the top left and right corners just with your thumb. But I think in reality, we didn't want smaller phones, we wanted thinner phones and kind of curvature phones that allow us to do all this in a larger screen form factor like this 6.6-inch display or 6.56 inches. The only real comparison in terms of like the material feel of what this is, and I'm trying to set this in a positive light. If you've ever seen one of those fake pieces of jewelry that isn't fake metal, it's actually just plastic that's painted chrome, that's what this feels like. You pick this up and it feels like nothing is in your hand. You put it in your pocket and it's one of those things that you forget that's in your pocket because it's so lightweight. And it's kind of like a phone that is weird that exists in terms of like the hardware itself. The hardware is extremely impressive. And then lastly, it is extremely rigid. Like it's very confidence inducing knowing that this thing will not bend. No matter how much you push it and how much you try to do this thing, it's not going to bend. It'll flex a little bit, but unless you're really putting it under some insane pressure, this thing is not going to bend. And Apple has definitely learned their lesson compared to when we had the bend gate with the iPhone 6s and 6Ss of the world. So from a hardware standpoint, if you're able to go into an Apple store, go into the Apple Store, even though it's usually tethered on, you'll be able to pick it up and feel how thin it is by being able to wrap your hand around it, and you can actually feel each edge of the screen and use it one-handed. So it's just the most comfortable iPhone that I've used since probably, I don't know, like the iPhone 5 series when they only had that 4-inch display. So kudos to Apple for putting this together because it is an amazing piece of hardware. And then once you got used to the hardware and got that all out of the way, then I just started to kind of focus on the experience from a software perspective, right? Because again, you're dealing with the A19 Pro. It does have one less GPU core compared to the Pro Max phones, and it is a better chipset than the A19 that's in the iPhone 17. So from a software and just kind of like a phone and smartphone usability perspective, it kind of checks off all the boxes, right? I used it over the weekend, so I was doing pretty much everything that I would want to. It's snappy, the 120 Hz ProMotion display makes it feel extremely fluid. All my apps opened very quickly, everything was very snappy, I was able to switch between applications very simply. The RAM management was actually great while being able to use this thing. So I was doing simple things over the weekend like scrolling Twitter, taking the occasional photo and video, streaming on YouTube, watching a Netflix video, playing music out loud while I was going on a walk with my family to kind of test out the speakers. And then I would play a couple little games here, nothing intensive, kind of like the 2048 games or something like a Retro Bowl. So I wasn't really pushing the graphics that I could kind of handle. But at the end of the day, it handled everything that I threw at it very easily, just as you would expect out of a $1,000 phone in 2025. So from a software perspective, from a phone experience perspective, you're not really giving anything up, and it's pretty much on par with the entire iPhone 17 lineup at this point, which is good to know, especially again, since you are spending at least $1,000 on a phone in 2025. So you're probably asking the question, with all that use over the weekend, how is battery life overall? I really wanted to push this thing in terms of not putting it on a charger throughout the day to see what it was like, because my expectations were relatively low. I was expecting 4-5 hours of screen on time on this thing, especially if I was going to use it the way that I use an iPhone, which is pretty intensely. But again, I was using it on the weekend, so that's my caveat. I wasn't doing too much work on it to begin with, but I was doing everything from emailing to FaceTiming to communication to playing a couple little games here to downloading things in the background. And for the most part, aside from doing a lot of videography, I used it the same way that I would my 16 or 17 Pro Max. And if you guys do follow me on Twitter, which I'll put right here on the screen, I did kind of have you guys follow me along on my day with the iPhone Air to see what kind of battery life I got. And I averaged about 6 and a little bit more of 6 hours of screen on time as I was using it throughout the day. Started at 100% at around 9 a.m., finished at 3% at around 9 p.m., so it got me through a 12-hour day of pretty good use. I'm going to say above average use cases, not really super intense work. But again, 6 hours of screen on time, didn't charge it once, didn't use a MagSafe battery. I really just wanted to put it all the way to the end to see what kind of battery life I would get. And it was fine. Again, I didn't really have too much battery anxiety until the very, very end of the day. And then I did put it on the charger, and I was able to charge it with the 15-watt fast charging that it does support. But now the cameras, of course, this is the one main thing, especially that you can physically see, that's different about this phone than any other phone. It only has one single camera sensor on the rear, and it's that 48 megapixel shooter. And my overall synopsis on this is, in good lighting, if you're outside and taking pictures and videos and using the main camera sensor at 1x kind of optical, at that 1x focal length, you're going to get great pictures. You're going to get great video in 4K, and 4K 30, 4K 60. It's going to work as intended. And then you do have the quote-unquote 2x optical zoom, which just crops in. Those pictures are still pretty decent. There's nothing to write home about, but if you're just taking pictures for personal use or for your own memories, maybe to post on Facebook, that's going to be great as well. But the second you start to rely on that digital zoom, because I think you can zoom in up to 10x in a photo and up to 6x on a video, it starts to break down a little bit. It gets a little watercolory, right? Because at that point, you're just digitally zooming into the 48 megapixel sensor, and there's no macro mode, there's no ultra wide lens, there's no telephoto lens, there's nothing in there to kind of help from a physical hardware perspective to help those kind of situations out. So yes, if you are zooming in and you rely heavily on cameras, this is not going to be the iPhone for you, because it just can't do, and it's not capable of doing what the new 17 Pro Max can do, or even what some older Pro Maxes can do. Like, if you have something like a 13 Pro Max, I would definitely argue that that camera array and those camera sensors is better than the iPhone Air sensor that you have right here. So again, the synopsis is, it takes great pictures in great lighting, it takes average pictures or above average pictures in low lighting, and then again, if you are somebody that needs to rely on the zoom and optical lengths and things like that, this camera just probably won't do it for you if you use it in a professional setting. But if you use it just for fun, for personal use, for those personal memories, to maybe share an occasional Instagram photo, then this camera is going to be more than enough for the average person. And I think that's what Apple's trying to get away with in terms of, hey, this is going to be good enough for most people, and not everybody needs the pro level camera sensors that are on the Pro Max phones. But one nice thing I did like about the new cameras is the new center stage selfie camera. Now again, all the new iPhones have this, so I'm glad that they were able to still add it onto this one, even though it's such a thin chassis. The new selfie camera is awesome. The fact that you can now have a landscape photo taken while you are holding it in portrait orientation. It's an 18 megapixel shooter. It's got a great field of view. You can fit everybody on there. And here's an example of me using the selfie camera video as well as the onboard mics for the audio, so you guys can see what it's like. Well everyone, here is a test of the front-facing camera using the new Stage Manager camera, meaning that I'm holding my phone physically in portrait mode, but I'm able to record in landscape. And then this is also the audio from the iPhone Air. So all very cool stuff. The audio should be pretty decent overall, nothing crazy, but also you can kind of mess with it in the post inside of the actual Photos application. But again, you're not really getting this phone because it's going to be the best camera ever. You're getting this out of convenience because it can do most of the things in like an 8 out of 10 or maybe even 9 out of 10 in some settings. And now the last thing I do want to bring up is going to be heat dissipation, because again, Apple actually went away from titanium for the Pro and Pro Max phone this year because it wasn't great with heat, but this iPhone Air is made out of titanium because it's a much lighter weight material, and Apple did put all the compute and all the hardware in the little camera bar. And what's interesting is that in the new camera bar plateau, that's where it heats up. During my day-to-day use, surprisingly, the phone did not heat up whatsoever. I was outdoors. It was, 75, 80 degrees outside, so I wasn't in the Florida heat, but it also wasn't super cold outside, and it didn't overheat. The screen never dimmed when I was using it outside, and I was still able to use my camera no problem. The only time it did heat up a little bit was after I actually started to charge it from the 3% to the 30% that I was charging it. And where it would heat up was actually where the camera sensor is. Now, it's not going to be able to cook an egg. It's not crazy hot or anything like that, but you still felt a little bit of warmth, and it wasn't from the battery portion. It was up here where things were happening. This is where the brains of the entire phone is. So I don't know, it was just kind of interesting, but overall the heat wasn't a detriment to my usability. It wasn't a detriment to the battery, and it wasn't something that really I noticed while I was using it day to day. I just only noticed it when I picked it up off the MagSafe charger and I held it for a second, where I felt it up here and it was a little bit warmer. Another nice little thing about this new camera plateau is that it is kind of almost like a additional grip where you can kind of put your finger there, similar to how the Google Pixels do that. But that's all that I really noticed when it came to this iPhone. But again, the hardest part about this iPhone is determining who this is for. Because it's not a budget phone, right? It's a $1,000 phone, but it's also not a pro-level phone. It's got worse cameras, it's got worse data transfer speeds, it's got worse usability from that standpoint. It's only got the mono speaker like I mentioned in the very beginning, so you are giving up a decent amount from a hardware perspective, and you're paying more on top of that, which does make it a little bit of a head scratcher. Again, and even the battery, it's not for battery-hungry power users either. So the only thing that I can determine who this is for today is for the people that value form over function right now. If you want the prettiest phone on the block, if you want something that's going to wow people, if you want something that when you pick it up, you are astonished as to how lightweight this is and it hasn't lost its luster or the honeymoon phase yet, then this phone is for you. If you don't really care about having the latest and greatest from a tech perspective, this is for you, but you do care about what it looks like, this is for you. I will say I have the sky blue color, and this is just another shade of white. So either you get the black color or the 3 different shades of white, which is kind of funny, but overall this is for the person who just wants to have the sleekest looking phone and doesn't mind spending a little bit of money for it and a little bit of a premium for that, because that is now a feature. The fact that they can get it this thin, this kind of rigid, and this strong and powerful, and with the battery life still being good enough to get you through kind of all day battery life, that's what you're paying for. The big feature here is the actual design and the form factor. But I do want to leave you with one thing here when it comes to the iPhone Air, just something that I've been thinking about, right? Because, of course, with our iPhone 17 lineup, we have the iPhone 17, the 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max. And with this one, even though it is in the new lineup of iPhones, this is just the iPhone Air. What I think is happening here is I think this is going to be the precursor to a folding lineup and a new ultra-thin lineup of phones, where we're going to have the 17 and the 18 and the 19 continue to grow, but next year, we'll have the iPhone Air still, but we're going to have an iPhone Air Fold, right? It's just going to be a new type of category for iPhone, and that's why this isn't the iPhone 17 Air. This is just the iPhone Air because it's the beginning of a brand new category for Apple, and that's what I think this is for. Because if you have something this thin and then you start to fold it in half, it's still not that thick at the end of the day, and I'm sure Apple can get it even thinner if they really want to. So I think that's what this means. I think that's what this phone is for. It is kind of a proof of concept, a live demo to see if people A, want such a thin form factor, if B, the titanium and the rigidity holds up over time, C, if it is something that people want where they would give up some functionality for this cool form factor, and then lastly, like I said, a precursor to an iPhone Air Flip or an iPhone Air Fold. That's just my 2 cents. Let me know in the comment down below what you think. Did you pick up an iPhone Air? Are you going to pick one up? What have you thought about the early reviews that come through it? Again, I really like this phone, and if I didn't use my iPhone for videography, for my professional work, for stuff like this that we're doing right now, I would keep this phone. This would be the phone that I would hold on and use as my main phone. I actually am going to hold on to it and use it kind of as my weekend phone, the same way that I used to use the iPhone SE, because I just think it's such a cool phone, and when I'm not working, it's nice to be able to just have this, not really think about all the different things that the Pro Max can do. But again, the Pro Max, I have my review coming on this thing. This thing's an absolute tank. It's awesome. I love this just as much. But the iPhone Air is a breath of fresh air, and it's something that I've been wanting for a while now. Just something new, something to kind of really get us thinking a little bit in terms of what Apple is doing. But that'll do it for this video, everybody. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin. And if you want to watch more videos like this, check out one of these videos right here. Until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everyone.